A crazy week is ahead, from southern snow and ice to an Arctic blast set to last for days from parts of the central to the eastern US. This video has the full breakdown of those weather impacts and a look at the longer range forecast. Thank you very much for taking time out of your day to tune into this video. I'm going to start by overviewing the weather pattern for the week ahead using this European model. Then I'll break down in more detail the southern snowfall and the Arctic blast on the way, as well as the longer range pattern. All those parts will come and be break down in more detail as we go later on in the video. But here we go, starting off with this precipitation graphic as we go overnight tonight, Monday, and then into the daytime hours of our Tuesday, January 21st. The overall pattern for the vast majority of the U.S., especially east of the Rockies, is cold, dry air with a northwest to southeast jet stream flow, bringing in the polar vortex. That's a term that's used a lot, but actually only comes down into the U.S. now and then. Temperatures 20, 30, 40 degrees below normal from parts of the north central plains all the way to the east coast by the time we go to our Tuesday afternoon. But all while this is going on, we do have a winter storm impacting some parts of the country. This is the only really defined winter storm other than lake effect snow going on our Tuesday. You can see down here towards the Gulf Coast, we're going to be watching impacts from Texas to Louisiana, to Mississippi, to Alabama, to parts of North Florida, and then up into Georgia and the Carolinas as this pushes through from the beginning of the day Tuesday all the way through the evening and then into the early parts of our Wednesday. This is going to be an impactful winter storm all the way as far south as the I-10 corridor, as a very rare snow track is going to be coming with that, and of course I'll break that down in more detail here in just a minute. As I mentioned, it'll last through Wednesday morning, and then it pushes off the east coast. Continued dry, cold air for most of the country, unless you're up here in the north central plains, where we'll have to watch some of these lighter snow bands and flurries that will push through from the north to the south through the afternoon on Wednesday. Some of that energy will push towards the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley with light snow there into Thursday, but the vast majority of the U.S. continues with this overall dry pattern, and we will begin to start warming up for some zones as we go towards the end of the week and into the weekend. With that overview for the upcoming pattern now complete, I want to go ahead and get into the full breakdown for the winter storm set to impact parts of the south central U.S. and over to the southeast, including the Gulf Coast in the coming day or two. We're looking at the winter weather alerts as of our Monday evening that have already been issued for this storm, and you can see those purples on your screen if you live in any of those zones, from parts of Texas all the way over to Georgia and the Carolinas. On the north side of the bright blues where you see those purples, that is a winter weather advisory. We're probably going to get grazed by some of the winter weather impacts with this storm, but we are not going to get the heavy snow or ice unless we see a significant shift with this storm. Where we're more concerned in terms of infrastructure issues and travel issues is where we have the winter storm warning indicated by those bright blues. From southeast Texas, right along through parts of south central Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, into north Florida, including Tallahassee over to Jacksonville, through southern and central parts of Georgia, and then to the Carolina coastline. Those bright blues indicate winter storm warnings, where we're going to be likely seeing more significant impacts to, again, travel and infrastructure due to this winter storm. Let's go ahead and give you a look at some of the timing of that using the GFS model. Alright, let's start the timeline down here using this GFS model, looking at what's going on in the near term as I'm recording this video on our Monday evening. And let's pick things up as we go from here and into the middle of the night tonight into the very early morning hours of our Tuesday, January 21st. Notice what's expected to be going on here in parts of Texas and Louisiana. A broad area with some wintry weather developing. Mostly snow anywhere from San Antonio to Houston over to Baton Rouge as we go to around the middle of the night tonight. But the southern area, the circled zone, especially as you get closer to the Texas and Louisiana Gulf Coast, as our winter storm begins picking up tonight and into the early hours of Tuesday, we'll have to watch some of the most treacherous travel here, because that's where our initial ice and sleet that could cause issues on roadways will eventually turn over to some heavier snow, and that could definitely cause even more travel and infrastructure issues as we go into our Tuesday. Certainly something we're going to be tracking there. It's very brief snow in Austin and San Antonio, as you can see overnight tonight and into the morning hours of our Tuesday. We're seeing pretty much the snow wrapping up in Houston and Beaumont and Galveston as early as around 7 to 10 a.m. in the morning, although it will be heavy at times as it does so. Where we're going to get prolonged, heavier snowfall is going to be in this corridor where you see some of those grays, indicating some of the heaviest snow of this event through south central Louisiana, over to New Iberia, Baton Rouge, Slidell, New Orleans, heavy snow there, and even into Hattiesburg and Gulfport and Mississippi. Looking like some decent snowfall through around mid-morning. That can definitely cause travel issues, maybe mixing with ice and sleet at times. Again, this is around mid to late morning Tuesday. From here, this is when we see impacts quickly begin to expand east, so that by the time we go towards around the middle of the afternoon into the middle of the evening on our Tuesday, we're looking at snow shifting over through a lot of southern and central Alabama, through the western Florida panhandle, trying to make a run for Tallahassee, although we could see some ice and sleet becoming more of a problem there. Snow up here through central Georgia. It looks like a bullseye for Macon. And then we'll see how much snow we can get up here towards Atlanta and then over into parts of Columbia, South Carolina, and Charlotte, North Carolina as well. I think whatever snow we do end up getting from this event up in this general zone, it's going to be iffy in terms of the totals. This is one of the iffier spots of this entire event, but it looks generally light up here, like most of our heavier snow is going to be closer to the coast. You can see that picking up as we go here into our Tuesday evening on this model. Rain in Jacksonville, maybe even freezing rain through this general quarter as we go through the evening of our Tuesday. But snow trying to push in from the west with that colder boundary in a place like Tallahassee by this point in time. Maybe trying to make a run for the Georgia, Carolina coast as well by this point. Again, all of these coastal areas probably going to see ice or sleet at some point before you see that transition to snow. That's very similar to what we saw back over towards the southern Louisiana shores as well. So unless something changes, expect a thin layer of some ice and sleet, and then we start to get some of the snow to fall as we go through the evening. Either way over here, it looks like things are going to begin to wrap up with maybe some light flurries along the coast continuing into our Wednesday morning, and then we're done through the afternoon on Wednesday especially. Now that we've talked timing of this storm, I want to give you an overall look at these final forecasted numbers from the National Digital Forecast Database and how much snow you can anticipate if this forecast holds. Again, this is a southern winter storm, so things could definitely shift a little bit. Don't expect necessarily the exact number that shows in your specific community, but overall you can roughly expect around a dusting to maybe an inch or so as you come from San Antonio pushing up into the Austin metro area. It's going to be on the east side of there, and as you push into the Houston metroplex where we see snow totals picking up as we go overnight tonight and then through the mid-morning hours at least of our Tuesday morning. Around Houston, around 3 to 5 inches of snow certainly possible. Same goes with Kingwood, Liberty, Lumberton, and Beaumont there in Texas, even down to Galveston, at least a couple of inches. Definitely some ice initially, but a couple to maybe even 4 or more inches of snow by the time this is all said and done, ending into our Tuesday morning. Over here, as you go into parts of Louisiana, we're going to see snow through a good chunk of the day, and that's going to lead to a big swath here in these blue shades from Alexandria Point south especially, and then down to the coast. At least 2 to 4 inches in many of these zones, and then where you see these blues turning over to purples, a lot more spots picking up 5, 6, 7, upwards of 8 inches with those locally highest amounts here from Lake Charles to Lake Arthur to Jennings to Lafayette over to Baton Rouge. Then it looks like totals are going to drop off some as we come through south central Mississippi, but still 2 to 4 inches plus from Hattiesburg down to Gulfport. Same goes with Mobile there in Alabama. And then this is where I have some question marks in terms of our snow totals. Looks like Crestview and Destin there in Florida could pick up at least a few inches of snow, but the question comes with all the snow that's going to come through north central parts of the Florida Panhandle over into Georgia and the Carolinas. There's some indications this could be heavier snow. There's some indications this system could really die out as it moves over into this general area. But for now, with these National Digital Forecast Database numbers, anticipate maybe around an inch in Tallahassee, an inch to 3 inches here through a lot of south central Georgia as a moderate snow stripe moves through. And the same goes here as you push towards the Carolina coast with that snow that will fall into our Tuesday night and into Wednesday. A lot of spots currently in the forecast anticipating around an inch to 3 inches, maybe a little bit higher along that immediate coastline where some of those snowfall totals could continue to add up even after the sun comes up briefly on our Wednesday morning. We'll see how much snow we could get from Atlanta up to Greenville to Charlotte, but for now, not looking like much, even if the forecast does shift a little bit north. That wraps up my final forecast for the southern winter storm, though. If your forecast totals aren't perfect, it's definitely probably going to be because we see some sort of major shift as we get closer, because right now the models are actually overall lining up on what is going to happen out of this particular system. Moving on here to the Arctic blast, looking at the day-by-day temperatures with your National Digital Forecast Database for the rest of this week. Starting on the morning of our Tuesday, January 21st, look at the cold air. All spots around and north of this line, not even factoring in the wind chill, expected to be around or below 0 degrees Fahrenheit. From the Rockies up into the north central U.S., through the Great Lakes, parts of Indiana, Ohio, and then into the interior Northeast. All these locations in those greenish shades, well below 0 in some cases there, as well as you come on up here into Nebraska, the Dakotas, Minnesota, Iowa, and Wisconsin. It was even colder than this in some of these zones, especially when you factored in the wind chill on our Monday morning, but it is still very cold Tuesday, and it's even in the teens and 20s down here towards the Gulf Coast as we're ready for that winter storm, of course, to ramp up overnight tonight and into this time frame. As we go through the day Tuesday, temperatures warm up all across the U.S., of course, because we do have that daytime heating, but this is not too much in the way of daytime heating, as some areas in this general zone struggling to get out of the teens and 20s, and in extreme case there in Minnesota into Wisconsin, we are anticipating temperatures to stay below 0 and be even colder with that wind chill into our Tuesday afternoon. This is dangerous cold. You want to be protecting people, pipes, and pets. Make sure you're dripping those faucets with this kind of cold in a lot of these locations. And then as you come down here towards Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and the Carolinas, looking at lots of 30s here, again, as that winter storm is going to keep those highs at a minimum even down here. Into the morning of our Wednesday, January 22nd, you can definitely see our Arctic blast pushing east a little bit. Still teens and 20s through a lot of the Mountain West and out into the Central Plains, but our bigger dip in the jet stream with those coldest temperatures definitely noted here with single digits, and single digits on the other side of zero in some cases, from Minnesota through Wisconsin. Lots of Illinois, including Chicago, with a nice 0-degree low Wednesday morning. Indianapolis, -2, around -10 in some parts of Cleveland as we go into Wednesday morning, and -5 to -15 all the way on up here through parts of the interior Northeast. Even teens and some single digits trying to get as far south as Tennessee and the Gulf Coast. Into our Wednesday afternoon, recovering a little bit down there closer to the south and the Gulf Coast as we see 60s and 70s back coming out of parts of California and Arizona. Some of that warmth spilling out with 50s here into Texas and Oklahoma. But overall, we're still looking at teens and 20s on up there towards the northeastern quadrant of the U.S. Thursday morning, a lot more single digits and teens across the entire country, with 20s still as far south as the Gulf Coast. And then look at Thursday afternoon, another day where we've still got that jet stream generally flowing down like this. A lot of temperatures staying below freezing north of this line, and some spots there closer to the far northern border with Canada, still in the teens and 20s. Eventually, though, these warmer temperatures that you see down here towards Texas and the deep south with more 40s and 50s moving into our Thursday afternoon, they are going to spill northward as we get to the very end of the week, and that could set us up for an eventual storm system that brings some rain and a bigger thaw to a lot of areas. In fact, that leads me into the longer range temperature anomaly discussion here. I want to start things out as we go out of Thursday, January 23rd and into our Friday, January 24th. Still technically cooler than average by at least 10 to 15 degrees as anticipated by this blend of guidance forming your European ensembles for this Friday morning time frame. That's from especially the Mississippi River Valley to the East Coast. But look at what happens as we go out of our Friday and into the afternoon. We start seeing some warmth building on up there in terms of anomalies, at least 5 to 10 to 15 degrees above average up there in the North Central Plains. And then at least for a brief time here as we get into our Saturday, temperatures near to above average here, especially along and around that Mississippi River Valley as a landmark point around Saturday. But it's still going to be harder to find warmer than average anomalies, I think, as we go out of the upcoming weekend into that following week, because these ensembles actually indicating cooler air trying to dominate and fill back up parts of the Mississippi Valley over into the Ohio Valley as early as Monday into Tuesday. That indicates some sort of system had to turn those warmer conditions back cooler again in this general zone. So we're probably going to see another system up through here, and it could involve more rain and then maybe some tailing snow as that cooler air pushes in. Plenty of time to focus on what could happen out of that system, but that's just a little bit of a look towards the longer range temperature trends, which makes it look like we're going to see cooler air for many parts of the U.S. continuing through the end of January. That being said, though, that leads me to the end of this video as I'm going to recap those headlines, starting with headline number 1. Of course, the main thing that I broke down in this video was that we have snow and ice coming to the South and Gulf Coast as we go towards the next couple of days. It's going to be a breezy, wintry wonderland, but it's also going to cause infrastructure and travel issues, of course, especially wherever we see that specific most amount of snowfall. Polar vortex is also going on this week, so a lot to track, and I'll keep you updated on all of that, as well as the longer range pattern as it gets closer to us, with all those updates right here at One Nation Weather. I'm getting close to 10,000 subscribers, so I'd love it if you'd become one of them by hitting that button right down below, as well as the notification bell. Check out the weather bell link down in the description of this video for weather model maps like the ones I use, but I'll see you next time at
One Nation Weather.